Now, the Great Depression obviously had a massive impact on Germany. German businesses were making products for American businesses to buy. Now that America had gone through the Wall Street crash, these factories and businesses were making stuff, but it wasn't getting bought. That meant that they needed to close. They had to shut down factories and they needed to, should we say, fire their workforce because they weren't making any money anymore. This meant that millions of people in Germany ended up being unemployed, which means they don't have a job. It's used as a good metric when you look at countries to see how successful they are. If everyone has a job, that means that country's making money. But if there are loads of people unemployed, that means there are a lot of people that are going to be struggling. In Germany, the unemployment figure reaches about 6 million people, which is massive. It's a huge number. And it meant that lots of people were now living in poverty in Germany. Lots of people struggling to feed themselves, lots of people struggling to find work or food, and even in the picture on the board, children possibly even were, well, having to be fed by what I'm going to use the phrase like a food bank. Now, this affected the Nazis' votes. See, the Nazis were an extremist party, and when I say extremist, I mean that they demanded change. They wanted to change the way Germany worked so that they could run it the way they thought would improve the country. And in terms of the Nazis, should we say, demands for change, they wanted one person in power, Mr. Adolf Hitler. Now, during the German Golden Age, when everyone had a good time, nobody really wanted to change anything. The situation in Germany was good, so why would they change things? See, the Great Depression, this period of poverty and bad times for everybody, brings up feelings of annoyance and anger in people. It makes them want to change things back to the way they were. And that means that hard times are really good for extremist parties. And for the Nazis in particular, they were fantastic. So you can see in the graph just above me that the Nazis' votes increases almost with the amount of people that are unemployed. That gives us as an inference, it gives us an understanding that maybe when people became unemployed, they thought that voting for the Nazis would allow the Nazis to change the way the system works and get them jobs back. And we'll talk about how the Nazis promoted that later. But this is what then brought, should we say, interest into the Nazi Party. They go from being 1 or 2% or even 3% of the vote share in Germany to suddenly being worth about 30 or 40% of the vote share. They were the party that most of the people in Germany were voting for, which meant people needed to start listening to them. There's a number of factors other than the Great Depression that fuel this want for the Nazis, and the way I want you to remember them is by using a mnemonic, a letter for each step. Limp, paper. I'll rattle off this list, but if you manage to get this into your head, you will be much better off in terms of recalling specific reasons why Nazis were being voted for. So L in limp stands for long-term bitterness. The people of Germany had been angry with the way things had been run for a very long time, starting in 1919 with the Treaty of Versailles, angers against the Weimar government, 1923, and now the Great Depression had made people so angry that they wanted change, and that was a vote for the Nazis. I stands for ineffective constitution. Basically, the system of the Weimar government that they set up in the 1920s wasn't very good. There were some problems with it that the Nazis could abuse to take over power. For example, proportional representation being slow and Article 48 allowing the president a little bit too much power. We'll get to why that's a reason later. M stands for money. The Nazis were funded by rich capitalists who wanted the changes the Nazis offered. They wanted to make people get back into work. One of them is Henry Ford, the Ford Motor Car Company. You're probably still around today, but money is a key reason. P, there are 3 P's, so I might mix these up, but propaganda is the first P for limp. The Nazis were very good at sharing their ideas and making their ideas visible to the people. You'd know of the Nazis, you'd know of them because of their propaganda, and you'd understand their ideas quite well. This meant people wanted to maybe vote for that idea because it was popular. The other P in paper stands for program. The Nazis had a plan. This doesn't sound like a crazy reason, but it is. Many people, including the Weimar government, did not have solutions to these problems. They said, this is a hard time, we're just going to have to bear with it, we'll try and help you. Meanwhile, the Nazis said, no, we have changes to bring, in particular, blaming Jewish people for this problem and removing them. As much as it's a horrible solution, it's the solution, and having a plan makes you look arguably more competent than other people in power. A stands for attacks on other parties. The Nazis were really good, using propaganda and their money, to make other parties look bad. They made all of their enemies look like bad choices, which would make them look like the only good choice to many voters in Germany. The primary target was often the Communist Party, which we'll talk about again later. The last P stands for personal qualities. Essentially, Hitler himself. Hitler was an orator. He was really good at public speaking. I say in lesson, you've all done your English speaking speeches, and people who hold their piece of paper and just kind of quietly read from the paper, they're not very convincing. You're not going to, vote for somebody that speaks poorly at you. Hitler was a very valuable speaker and a very valuable part of the Nazi Party because people got excited when listening to him. He was entertaining and got in the news fairly regularly for the stuff he said, which made people want to vote for him. E is this, the Great Depression. E stands for economic depression. People were struggling with money, which meant that they wanted change, which meant that they voted Nazi. And R is the last one. It stands for recruited by Hindenburg. And just remember it now. It won't be, relevant today. It'll be relevant in the next video. So if you want to revise this and you want to write some answers to questions down, here's your questions. What did the Great Depression do to Germany? How did this affect Nazi votes? Why did people want the Nazis now? And what does limp paper stand for? If you know the answers to those, you know the answers to this topic. All right, good luck.